Anu and I were walking around drinking coffee in my neighborhood the other week, and somehow I started talking in response to something he said about a Randy Newman song. I love LA. For like 5 minutes, just monologuing about it, and then I said, "Sorry about the rant," and I said, "I guess I need to have my own podcast." And Anna responded, "Yes," and the name of the podcast needs to be Ranty Newman. And so
That's awesome.
Anna started talking about the police albums and how that and ranking them in order, what the best one is and what the worst one is.
I think Anu is sort of your muse in lots of ways, right? Like, I think it's every 10 years or 15 years, Anu comes up with some sort of idea that really clicks with you, it seems.
Yeah, well, he needs to come up with ideas more often than that. But yeah, I'll take a good idea every 10 years. Anu, what is the... So there are 5 police records. What is the worst? What is the least excellent? At the bottom of the list.
I'm going to have to go with their first album, Outlandos No More.
Okay.
And I'm putting that at the bottom of the list for a couple reasons. It Relative to the rest of their catalog, from my perspective, it's kind of unformed. It sounds the least like the Police, or at least what you think of the Police sounding like. It definitely has a couple of great songs on it. That's why they got attention and got moving. But in many ways, it feels unfinished and unformed. The songs don't have the finesse. It feels like they're trying to be, with air quotes, punk. And it's one of the only records where I feel like there is this kind of sweaty sense of them trying really hard to do something that way. Of all of their records, it's the one that I probably listen to the least, save the big singles. But that's my take. I think their first one is their weakest, and it's not a bad record. It's still better than a lot of bands' best records, but it's the one that I would say is the weakest.
All right, so Outlandos D'Amour comes in at number 5. JP, you were shaking your head. Do you want to advocate that he's missing something?
I like it, actually. I think it's
I love all the records.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say where I would rank it, but it's not number 5. Okay. Yeah, I think that I don't know. I love that record for some reason. It's not recorded particularly well. It doesn't sound great. And there's definitely, they've got that punk energy, I guess I would say. And if you ever watch any videos of them like on YouTube from this point in time, like they're like a riot to watch live. Like they're really killing it. And there's a ton of energy there. But like there's just a lot of really catchy songs here. There's not really any, like the thing that, yesterday I went and I listened to all 5 of these albums again just to sort of get my bearings on it.
Yeah, me too.
And the thing that struck me about this one is that there's not really, every album has got like some sort of a like stinker on it, at least one stinker, and sometimes it's the instrumental one. But this record doesn't really have that many stinkers on it. I don't think. To me, all these songs they're like Anu, you're right. It doesn't like they haven't totally formed into the Police yet, but these are like catchy, well written songs. There's something there. I like almost every one.
So I think you're right about there not being any like really egregious like thing that's gonna on the record that's gonna like make someone hate that particular song. Although is Be My Girl on that record?
Yeah, that's the stinker.
Would you be my girl? Would you be my girl? What I was gonna say though is that if there aren't any super like polarizing stinkers, that might also be an indication that they're not really taking a whole lot of risks.
I don't know. Their stinkers are really bad.
All right, well, we're going to get to them, I'm sure. Let's not talk about the stinkers though. What's the best right now? What's the JP? What's the highlight? What's the best track on Outlandos?
It's hard because there's so many of them that I know. I mean, like Roxanne would be the the canonical answer to that, but like it's tired, yeah. Right? Same with Next to You. Great tune. I don't know. I don't know that I have a favorite on it.
How about you on? Oh, go ahead, JP.
No, I was just gonna say I have a least favorite, but
for me, I think you are there. There are great songs on there, right? And it's hard not to just immediately go, "Oh, Roxanne." I mean, that without that song, I don't think the Police would have been the Police, right?
Yeah.
But it's so for people like us, it's so played, and even back in those days, as great as it was a little bit like, oh, this again. For me, the one that wins is "Can't Stand Losing You," and the reason that it wins is, first of all, I think it's as good or catchy as Roxanne. It's got that same sort of reggae influence that would come to sort of define what we think of as classic Police, but it's also really dark. It's got all the things that you would expect Sting to be coming up with in terms of like some clever wordplay and things like that. But it's pretty dark, and the single, the image was banned. They wouldn't let people show it in record stores because it was too disturbing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's let's see here.
I mean, it was. I don't know if it was disturbing as maybe it was, but it was. It definitely referenced suicide. I think it was Stuart Copeland photographed from behind, standing on a block of ice with a noose around his neck, if I recall correctly, something like that. So you're both wrong. The correct answer is in fact Roxanne.
Roxanne.
But the dark, I Can't Stand Losing You. The darkness in it is clunky. Like I find it like it's humorous, like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
We're making jokes about suicide. I'm not saying you're wrong about that. That nonetheless, that like it not being a more traditional lost love or found love song isn't part of its charm, mystique, whatever you want to call it. But that's the reason why I can't. I got to give the edge to Roxanne, even though Roxanne has clunky lyrics too, in a way, like and kind of lyrics that haven't aged well, and particularly like you don't care if it's wrong or right. Like, shut up, like don't mansplain prostitution to the sex worker, please. Anyway, we're saying.
I mean. For me, it sticks in my head that did you listen to all the records yesterday? Did you listen to Roxanne or did you skip over it?
But I listened to every track on every record. I didn't skip anything.
That sounds like you. I skip it because I know that song so well. Great song. I just don't want to listen to it again.
So there's some things that actually like I never realized until I read the Wikipedia article as I was listening to it. There's the piano in the beginning, which is Sting supposedly accidentally sitting on the piano keyboard, and the fact that and then the laughter that ensued after it was that, like, which I always heard the laughter and never understood what it was about, but kind of just leaving those kinds of elements in the mix or inserting them in the mix is kind of adds a certain charm to the track that I think is that for me makes it stand out from some of the more quote unquote polished. I mean, we said this record isn't recorded that great, but some of the more polished tunes.
One of the things that I noticed as I was listening to the remastered versions of all these things, and my recollection of this song from the past, I guess, was that it started off with a guitar part going nah nah nah, but there was it seemed like it was very speeded. Like it started off at a lower pitch and then they pitched it up to the pitch that the song was in. That's not on the remaster anymore.
Oh well, I mean, I was listening to my copy from my CD that I bought when it came out, so pretty sure that's still on there. I don't know though. Maybe if it wasn't on there, I don't know if I would have missed it. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about though. It starts and then and that's another like, oh, was that a mistake? Did they like actually put the tape in at the wrong speed and then correct it or something?
Yeah, I was just surprised that they fixed that. Like that was almost part of the, for me anyway, part of the song.
Absolutely, that is, yeah. No, that's like a signature to that recording. You have to have that. So, what's the number 4 album, Anu? we'll get to your rankings later, JP. So keep track of yours. But let's Anu, what's number 4?
I think that this is tough because for me, number 3 and number 4 are very, very close. But I'm going to have to say, unfortunately, that number 4 is Ghost in the Machine. And the reason why that comes in at number 4 is that, on the one hand, it has some of their best songs, in my opinion, right? Half of the record is really, really, really strong. But then there's the other half of the record. And the other half of the record has sort of... Well, first of all, the songs are all, for the most part, really, really, really simple. They're like A-B structures. They don't often have bridges. They're very short. It sounds great, but stuff like too much information, rehumanize yourself, one world, Omega Man, Hungry for You.
Yeah.
These feel like doodles, not songs, particularly when you put them up against, I mean, if the whole record had been as strong as Spirits in the Material World, Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic, Invisible Sun, Secret Journey, and Darkness, it'd be a stone cold classic. But like I said, aside from those 5 amazing songs, there's 6 more songs on the record. And they're not terrible because the musicianship and at this point the quality of largely Sting's songwriting means that it's competent, right? And it's well recorded, etc. It's just when I compare it to all of the other records as an album experience, while I might like some of these individual songs better than some of the songs on the records that I would score higher, as an overall record, the fact that there's just it just feels like kind of half-baked a little bit. I will say this, Ghost in the Machine has, in my opinion, the best album cover.
Yeah.
I think Omega Man is underrated personally.
Okay.
But I hear what you're saying about all of that. JP, what's your stinker on this record? And what's your stinker on the last record? We didn't confirm.
Wait, no, the stinker on the last record, Be My Girl, right?
Okay, yeah, that would be my choice. Yeah,
But even that's not like that bad of a stinker as far as these things go. Like every album has a worse stinker than that.
the Sally part, the Sally part's pretty unlistenable to me. But just because like the lyrical content just makes me cringe.
Yeah, so I agree with Anu that this one's actually my number 4 as well. And I think it's like the A side is like outstanding, but the B side, like I never had this as a record or a tape, but I'm pretty sure that mine would not have been very worn out. Like every one of those songs is just unremarkable. And so in terms of what's the stinker on this one, it's sort of like side B is the stinker. But if I had to pick one song, I'd probably pick Rehumanize Yourself. Rehumanize Yourself. I don't know. It's a hard one because like there's like a bunch of songs on this one that I don't love. Like there's half this record is like wow, and then the other half of this record is just like what? It's throwaway. To me, it seems like throwaway. But it's got like the great songs have got like a really dark vibe to them, which I love. And this is also the record where like Sting seems to be, he's discovered the ninth chord, right? Or, he's really stacking harmonies all over everything. And they're like tight harmonies. It's like, this is the record where he just did that over and over and over again, which is cool. I love that.
Yeah, I'm gonna second the dark vibe. I think that's one of the things that's really appealing about the record for me. Invisible Sun is just so gloomy in its own way, and this is also why I really like Secret Journey and Darkness, which are the 2 songs that close out the album. Darkness is a Stuart Copeland song and is a great example of why he's such a good songwriter in and of himself. It's very, very simple, but man, what a heavy banger to close out the record with. And that, just like JP said, I feel like the kind of 5 songs in the middle, it just feels like they weren't trying, or that they were rushed into the studio 6 months sooner than they should have. And it's sort of the most autopilot that I can think of the Police being on in their catalog.
So what is the banger? What's the one track to listen to over and over and over again on a road trip?
It might be Spirits in the Material World.
How about you, Anu?
It's sort of a toss-up. Spirits in Material World, I think, is fantastic. It's such a great opener. Yeah. It's so interesting. Sounds great. Invisible Sun is one that I really like, but it is so gloomy that there's sometimes I'm just like, I can't do this right now. And for me, like I said, Darkness, the album closer, is one that I don't know that I ever skip, but it's pretty heavy. I think Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic is awesome. Yeah. I've just heard it so many times that the magic in it has kind of worn off from me. So if JP's going to go with Spirits, I'm going to go with Invisible Sun.
The correct answer is Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic.
Damn it! Looks like Rich is going to be walking away with the new car at the end of this one, guys.
All right, what's the number three album, Anu? What edges out Ghost in the Machine?
Number three is Zenyatta Mondada.
Yeah.
And it edges out Ghost in the Machine because basically it has more songs that aren't bad. It's solid pretty much all the way through. The thing that holds it back a little bit is that its best songs aren't, like, the best song on this record isn't as good as the best songs on pretty much any of their other albums. With a couple of, there's things that are pretty close, but this for me is like B level Police all the way through. Don't Stand So Close to Me is amazing. Okay, great. Driven to Tears, also a pretty good song, but I would argue not as good as anything on like Regatta de Blanc or their best songs. I like When the World Is Running Down, but it's another one of those things. It's like, okay, it's a good song. It's not a great song, right? And I personally also think I hated this song when I was a teenager, da do 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 da 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 da. But now as a songwriter, I'm like, this is pretty good. It's just kind of trivial. And I really like Shadows in the Rain in terms of being sort of a weird outlier in their catalog, or a kind of a vibey song that they didn't do much. But yeah, for me, it's like, as an album all the way through, I don't get up and go, oh my God, please stop singing about One World or Rehumanize Yourself or whatever. Like, I don't have to skip anything on this record. It's fun. It breezes by. It's well balanced. It's just like the lows aren't as low as the bottom of their catalog, but it doesn't get to that level of transcendence that their best material does.
Maybe there are people for whom these songs are really, like the absolute best, Police material and great, but they're wrong. A lot of songs that I do love on this record, I came to love as a result of later manifestations of the songs. So When the World Is Running Down, I love the Kenny Kirkland solo and Bring On the Night. It's just, it's like, oh, so I love that version. And then I can go back and listen, but until I experienced that.
Yeah,
I didn't
same
really
with
care
Shadows in the
really
Rain.
I was gonna say Shadows in the Rain. I think Shadows in the Rain is a great track, and I think I failed to adequately appreciate
totally
it
agree.
until the remake, which totally changes the vibe. It might as well be
Yeah.
a completely different song, but it caused me to go back and listen more closely and appreciate the weirdness of it and the percussive piano and stuff. And even Driven to Tears, I think is pretty, that song for me is again elevated by the guitar solo, which is so weird. When I was listening to these records, I was at a time in my life where, for better or for worse, probably slightly for worse, I was fixated on improvised solos and things being musically advanced or adventurous or whatever, which thankfully age has tempered that. But it meant that it was really easy to not want to listen to Don't Stand So Close to Me or do 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 da 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 and to sort of skip over When the World Is Running Down and Shadows in the Rain until that's cool. Let me check out the original again. And it's like, oh, you know what? Actually, anyway, yeah. So that's all I got to say about that. JP, what do you think of this album and these?
So I love this record. This
Yeah?
is this one ranks high for me. And I think the reason that it does is there aren't, to Anu's point, maybe to your point too, Rich, there aren't any outstanding songs on it. But I guess I skipped the outstanding songs at this point. So this one's just got a bunch of, really solid songs that I like to listen to. There's not, with the exception of one stinker, most of these songs are pretty good. And so I don't know. This is one that I can almost listen to front to back and enjoy it.
What's the stinker?
Come on, you gotta ask. What do you think the stinker is? This is the greatest stinker in the whole catalog. The Grammy-winning stinker?
Behind the Camel? Behind my camel?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, the thing I'd say about this record is that the songs are fun, right? Even the ones that are slightly dark, the way that the record sounds, it sounds fun. And a lot of the songs on here, they have sort of like a goofy, upbeat quality. It's easy to listen to, right? But there's also, I don't know, I'd have to go back, but I'm also, if I'm remembering correctly, I listened to some of this stuff yesterday, but it seems like there's a lot of songs where it's just like the key parts are just like 2-chord vamps, bam, 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 and that's fine. It's just that's not these guys' best work. And I think it's a testament to, again, the quality of their musicianship, that they're able to take what, for a large part, are really simple songs and elevate them a little bit with playing. It's an easy record to listen to all the way through.
So I don't hate Behind My Camel. I'm not going to advocate for it. I don't understand why it's so detested by Sting and apparently you.
It doesn't belong anywhere.
Okay. It doesn't fit with the rest of the album, you mean?
It doesn't fit with anything. It's like, where did this song come from? This is awful. I can't skip that one fast enough.
Okay, I don't have a problem with it, but okay. What's the best track on the record?
You know, it's changed over the years. I used to say that "Don't Stand So Close to Me" was the best song on the record. It's a great hit single, and I love all the different layers of vocals. It was so fresh at the time, and so fantastic. But I think these days I probably would say "Shadows in the Rain." You know, and like you guys, like at the time that the record came out, I was a teenager. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But after Sting's solo record came out and I saw it on there and I listened to that, I was like, wasn't this a Police song? And I went back and listened to it, and I got really interested in it because it's not, at least to my ears, it's not like anything else in their catalog. Like I said, it has this weird kind of dark groove, and that makes it feel more complex and mysterious in a way that a lot of the other songs are like. They're fun, but like you get them real quick, and there's something about that I find compelling.
How about you, JP?
I'm gonna have to. This is one, like, I don't skip even the ones that are, like the normally skip hits. So it's like it's "Don't Stand So Close to Me" or "Dee Doo 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 Dee Da Da Da."
Okay, so go ahead.
No, I mean, I love "Shadows in the Rain," but like for me, it's like this version. I don't love it. Like, but I love the "Dream of the Blue Turtles" version.
Okay, so the correct answer is in fact "Shadows in the Rain." I love the doom doom bunk bunk, and the way the sort of like noisy guitar solo is there, but like kind of not there. And if you're listening for it, you hear it. But if and the way the vocals sound like they're like distant, and they're just clearly like they're just being weird, and it really works for me. So "Shadows in the Rain." So what's the number 2 album, Anu? Which is obviously going to reveal what the number 1 is, but that's okay. We're going to pretend that it doesn't.
And I will note that this was also something that was very close. So if I practically had records 3 and 4 tied and almost declared them a tie, this was also very tough. And I think if you asked me this question 2 years ago or a couple years from now, I might change. But my number 2 record, number 2 on the Police rundown, is "Synchronicity," the Police's masterpiece, or what people say is their masterpiece. And the main reason that this record comes in at number 2 for me these days is, number 1, it is really, at this point, the ascendance of Sting, right? This is a record where the guys, it matters that Stuart Copeland and Andy Summers are playing on it, but they feel more like they're there to back up Sting than being part of a band, number 1. Number 2, this is a way more pop record than a rock record, right? Number 3, it is so highly polished and thoroughly professional all the way through. It sounds amazing. Songs are great, but there is, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but there's a kind of professionalism to it that is safe, and it doesn't feel dangerous or exciting. It's also like, I love this record, absolutely love it. I've heard it so much, and there's something about guess the other thing is that if Zenyatta Mondatta had a lot of songs that felt a little silly or kind of goofy, this record is very serious. Like the whole demeanor about the thing, with maybe one exception, it is serious. These are serious songs. And as a teenager, I thought that was awesome. But these days, when I'm looking at their whole catalog, it's like it is just barely number two, because, but like in its favor, I don't know if there's a bad song on it.
Right.
It's amazing. Songs are great, sounds great, playing's great. And it's not just their great songs. These were massive hits, and many of them are stone cold classics. But like I said, there's a polish and a professionalism and a kind of self-seriousness to it that brings it down a notch for me.
So you said there's not a bad song on the record.
That's right.
Okay. JP, do you have any comments on that or anything else?
I don't know. I mean, this one would be my number one. For all the reasons that Anu mentioned, actually. I don't know. In terms of what's the stinker on this one, it's probably Mother. Is that my mother on the phone? I mean, what the hell is that? That song doesn't need to be on this record. You could get rid of that song and this record would be even better. My opinion.
So you're not crazy about the Andy Summers penned tunes Behind My Camel, Mother. So I understand why people don't like Mother. I actually really like Mother because I feel like, again, it might have just been where I was in my life when I heard it, but it was very King Crimson influenced, the guitar parts and stuff. I was into that. So, but I remember I was a freshman in college, and my roommate, in my recollection, he really only listened to like 2 bands. And he only listened to like 1.5 albums from each band. He only listened to Pink Floyd, and he only listened to The Wall and Momentary Lapse of Reason. Like, he didn't put on Wish You Were Here. He didn't put on Dark Side of the Moon. You know, like Momentary Lapse of Reason was current at the time, which is why. And he listened to The Police, but he only ever listened to the Hits collection and Synchronicity. And when he put Synchronicity on shuffle and Mother would come on, he'd run over to skip it. I'd be like, no, I want to hear that song. And
Don't love that one.
So for my roommate, Rutgers, Mother was the stinker for sure, but for me, I'm okay with it. I don't mind Miss Gradenko either, but I would probably prefer Mother. If I had to like lose one or the other, I'd actually probably choose to lose Miss Gradenko. Anyway, what is the magic track? What is the one track? Like, if you had to distill this record down to one, what's the magic? What's the one?
So there's a lot, right? I would say that I skip Every Breath You Take. I love King of Pain. That's a great song. Wrapped Around Your Finger is a great song. I'm going to go with Synchronicity.
Which one?
That's a toss-up. But
Synchronicity 1 and Synchronicity 2. Wow, it's a toss-up. Okay.
I'll put them together. Maybe Synchronicity 1. I think that album, like, it's a pretty awesome way to kick this record off. Like, the thing that's amazing about this record is they put out this, like, almost perfect record. Like, if you'd gotten rid of Mother, it might have been, even a little bit better. And then they were like, we're done. We're out. Like, that's a really cool way to sort of end it up.
It's a good mic drop.
Yeah.
Okay, so Synchronicity 1, dark horse pick. What do you think? What do you think, Anu? What's your favorite? What's your golden track?
All right, I'm gonna have to go with King of Pain. This is one of my favorite songs that Sting has written. One of the best songs that the Police did. Period. As far as the stinker goes, back in the day, everyone was just like, oh my God, Mother's horrible. Why is it on the record? And even back then, I was like, oh, it's there for very obvious reasons, right? It's trying to put a little spice or a little chaos or a little bit of what my friend Michael calls a rogue element on the record and keep it from being just too nice all the way through. I love the fact that it's so demented and out there, and it is extremely King Crimson-y. I didn't even think of that until you said that, Rich, and I was immediately like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. I like Miss Gradenko. I think it's a classic Stuart Copeland song. It's got a funny little hook and so forth. I don't think that there is a bad song on here, but I would note that I think Walking in Your Footsteps is pretty corny.
Yeah,
across the board.
Hey there,
It's
Mr.
like,
Brontosaurus. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, and again, it's not bad. It's just like at this point in his writing, Sting is starting to try to tackle what he thinks are important topics, and at times it's just like, okay, and that's sort of how I feel about that song. I'm like, okay, it's competent, it's nice, it's just like, at least with Mother, you're like, what is that? And with Walking in Your Footsteps, it's like, okay. But yeah, the standout track for me is King of Pain. I think that's I would die happy if I had written that song.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think is worth calling out here is that Synchronicity and Ghost in the Machine were recorded together within the space of about 9 months. So the growth in terms of songwriting and development as a band between those two records is enormous. And I don't know if it's just 100% Sting just like woodshedding, or the band deciding that they really wanted to go for the one, or whatever, but the fact that they went from, well, half this record's pretty good, and half this record's really good, and half this record is garbage, to a stone cold classic like Synchronicity in such a short period of time really says a lot. And yeah, it's not just that the songs are good. There's a lot of really interesting musical stuff that's going on, certainly by pop standards in here, not just the chords, but there's a couple of odd time signature bits and some kind of musical cleverness. The other thing that I love about this record is the vibe. It's just got so many of the songs just have a great vibe or a great mood that they establish. There's a lot of space on a lot of the songs too. And as much as I talk about it being kind of self-serious, they're still willing to joke around a little bit, like Sting kind of singing his own lyrics again at the end of Oh My God and whatnot. And yeah, it's fantastic. Makes me want to go listen to the whole thing again right now.
The other thing I like about this record is that the last two tracks, Tea in the Sahara and Murder by Numbers, they almost feel like they could be on Dream of the Blue Turtle. So it's like Sting's ending this thing with the police and like telling you this is where I'm going next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Murder by Numbers was a bonus track. It wasn't on, but those two are really strong. So as far as what the best track is, though, Anu's wrong. JP is right. It is in fact Synchronicity 1. Synchronicity.
It's just like it's got like so much like nervous pent up energy in it. It's killer.
I love the keyboard sequencer thing that like is in like a 6-bar phrase, and like it kind of throws you, and it's like they're opening the record that way, and they open their concerts that way and everything. But I mean, this is a tough one though. I mean, Wrapped Around Your Finger is amazing. King of Pain is amazing. I never cared for Every Breath You Take. I get it. I understand why people love it. I could never really get over the way it was so gentle, and the way like it starts with basically what the chord progression that we all play on the piano when we play Heart and Soul, could never get over that. And again, this was, at that time in my life, like it's like, I was someone who I only listened to complex music, and so like this was not something I could listen to. And of course, that's foolish, and there's other things going on later in the song that are, anyway, but it kind of just ruined it for me, I guess. And that's probably my loss. It's an objectively great song.
I think it's kind of overrated as a song, to be honest,
and overplayed too.
I mean, it's overplayed, sure. But the melody is really simple. It's not super great. I think the reason what the things that make the song are Andy Summers' guitar part, right? And guitar sound, like the total experience of that is the thing that you really latch on to. And the bridge, I think, that's where the song explodes for a second. But the rest of it is just sort of cooking along, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so creepy," whatever. That's not how it read at the time. It's just a love song. It's real good, but I don't think it's like this. It's not like a Leonard Cohen song or something. You know what I mean? Like Sting has written better songs than that.
I'd agree with that.
Interesting. So what's the number one record? What could it possibly be?
Well, the number one song, the best Police record, is Regatta de Blanc. That's right, Regatta de Blanc. Their second album, and in my opinion, here's why. This is a record where all of a sudden the police become the police, and it's exciting. It's a little weird. The songs are great all the way through. It feels like an actual band playing in a room and having a good time and being a little bit out there. It's not super polished, but there's great songs on it, and all of the things that we like about the following records are present on this record for the first time. There's vibe, there's depth, there's space, there's clever songwriting, there's interesting textures, there's jazz types of things being brought in here and there. And as a listening experience for me front to back, it's flawless. There's some darkness, there's some goofiness, there's some moodiness. And I think it's also a little overlooked because it was before they had blown up and gotten huge. And I talked a bit about the kind of like overwhelming seriousness of Synchronicity and how polished it was. Regatta de Blanc still to me sounds like a record where they are a band making good music and having a good time doing it. And there's something about that energy or that fun that comes through for me on the record. That's why it's my number one these days. It's very close between it and Synchronicity.
So this one's my number 5, actually. Like, I don't like this record. I mean, there's some great songs on it, right? And the great songs are really great, but the rest of them just don't move me. You know, like the hits, right? So Your Message in a Bottle, It's All Right for You, Bring on the Night, obviously, Walking on the Moon, all great songs. The rest of it, I don't know. I could take it or leave it. I find myself skipping, not the hits, but like all the, everything else.
What's the biggest stinker?
I don't know. Maybe Contact.
What's the song you love the most on it?
Yeah, I mean, Message in the Bottle is like the obvious answer, right? I guess I'm going to say Message in the Bottle.
How about you, Anu?
In terms of a stinker, I mean, I don't think that there is like a sort of a bad song on the record per se. Like, there's nothing that I feel like I have to skip when it comes along, but I do think that It's All Right for You and No Time This Time on their own are probably the weakest songs on the record, but in the album sequence, I think they work just fine. They both provide a little bit of rock energy, and I like the fact that the album ends with No Time This Time with that kind of crazy energy. So, I wouldn't necessarily listen to it on its own, but finishing up the album, it's a great way to wrap things up. I think my favorite track, I go back and forth on this a lot. There is something about Walking on the Moon that I think remains just magical and so unusual in terms of the vibe and the space that it creates, and not having heard things like that before. There's a lightness to it. It's a fun take on a love song. I think that's great. But depending on the time of the year, Bring on the Night would probably be my favorite track. And it is also because, like, for me, it makes me think of like sunset in the summertime, right? I'm in my teens, I'm getting ready to go out on a date, and it's finally cooling down, etc. I love the fingerstyle guitar and how it segues into sort of the reggae beat, or reggae chank. But yeah, I think it's really solid, and it's sort of a toss up. But if you ask me right now, I'd probably say Bring on the Night.
You'd probably say what?
Bring on the Night.
Yeah. The guitar on the verse of Bring on the Night, that fingerpick guitar part, is combined with the vocal melody is just absolute. Like if I had to pick like the best song fragment in the Police catalog, like it might be that, depending on when you ask me. But in terms of what the best track on the record is, the correct answer is Walking on the Moon. Walking on the Moon. For all the reasons that Anu said about the vibe and everything. But Bring on the Night, it's interesting. You say the vibe that it makes you think of is being a kid in summer or whatever, and apparently, at least according to the Wikipedia article, and I read a lot of Wikipedia articles about individual police songs this time around. Apparently, like after he wrote it, Sting would think about the the guy on death row who was the first person to be executed after the United States reinstated the death penalty, which is like really puts a different color to the song, I guess, than what I would think about. I'll go back to Message in a Bottle. I never noticed this until I was listening to it this time, and then the Wikipedia page confirmed it. Like I'm listening, and it's like, wait a minute, he's hitting the bell on the ride, he's doing the, really fast stuff on the hi-hat, and he's hitting the snare all at the same time. That's not one drum part, and sure enough, it's like, and he, in an interview, Stuart Copeland said that it's 6 parts, but I think he's just like, he was just being hyperbolic, but like, yeah, it's like, oh, so that really is an unplayable part.
Yeah, in a recent interview with Rick Beato, he mentioned that he wished he hadn't done that.
I missed that
Oh,
part.
yeah?
Yeah.
It ruins it for Rick?
I know, it ruins it for Stuart. Stuart's like,
Stuart
in retrospect, I wish I hadn't gone in and overdubbed that stuff. It was gratuitous and I didn't need to do it.
I see. It does make me want to go back to like Sting and like overdub a second, drum part. Try to like,
of course it does.
because I'm trying to get that like Stuart Copeland vibe on those drums, and it's not coming together for me, Right. So JP, you already gave away that your number 1 was Synchronicity, your number 4 was Ghost of the Machine, and your number 5 was Regatta Blanc. So that means that leaves Zenyatta, Mandata, and Outlandos d'Amour for number 2 or 3. Where do they go?
Zenyatta is number 2, and Outlandos is number 3 for me.
It just is, or that's just the right answer? Or do you want to give an explanation?
This is like, this ranking thing is really hard, actually. And I don't know. You could throw all these things up in the air and they can come down in some order, and I'd probably agree with it, to be honest with you. But that's sort of, if I had to make a choice yesterday, that's the way that I made I sort of laid it out. But the only thing that's for sure is that Regatta de Blanc is like absolutely at the bottom. That album sucks.
I don't know.
Kidding.
I don't know if I agree with that, but I don't know that I disagree either. Like I have a really hard, like, I didn't bother like trying to rate these albums. I'm like, Anu's going to do it because like he already had clearly expressed opinions earlier, and I mean, how do you even compare like Synchronicity to Outlandos or Regatta? Like it's like you can hear it's the same guy, same people in the band, but one record might be consistent, but like doesn't really hit the peaks. Another record might really hit some peaks, but also have some parts that don't really do it for you or whatever. And we already talked about how like the songs on Zenyatta Mandata, like at the time, like, and then later on, like and that just like that kind of happened just listening to him this week again, where like there were just some songs that like Canary in a Coal Mine never really landed for me before this time around, and there were a few others. But this was fun. I guess someone has to say the ritualistic, please like and subscribe and leave a comment telling us your worst tracks on each record, best tracks on each record, what order you'd put the records in.
Smash that subscribe button. Let's give a shout out to our sponsors. Moog synthesizers. If you want your bloops made in America, get Moog. Bloop. Yeah. But this is the other thing it's worth calling out about the Police is like this whole run was 5 years, right? This is like 1978 to 1983. And again, the growth in capabilities and success of the band during that time, they're basically putting out an album a year and touring, going from their first record to Synchronicity. It's like, good God, what incredible growth and polish and change and transformation. And I will second what JP was saying. Like, this was sort of difficult for me in the sense that it's really hard trying to decide between my number 1 and number 2, practically a tie, and I could just as easily argue the reverse. And same thing with my middle ones. And it's not to say I think that Outlandos is a bad record. It's just that it feels immature relative to the others. Yeah,
that's true. That's definitely true. Did you guys watch Rick Beato's interviewed all three of
Yeah.
these guys. Did you guys watch all
I
three of
did.
the interviews? What'd you think about those? Like, what'd you come away with?
I feel like Sting is a really hard guy to interview because he
Yeah,
seems so guarded and also so jaded and so unwilling to
and
act, yeah,
aloof.
so unwilling to actually engage and talk about this stuff. And to some degree, I suspect
Yeah,
my hypothesis is that he's sitting here going, I've made like 20 solo albums, and you guys still want to talk about the first batch of songs I wrote when I was, 22. Can we talk about one of my better records? Uh, Even as he also recognizes, all right, well, this is what the people want. Fine, we'll sit there and talk about it. Andy
yeah,
Summers, for someone who has lived such an interesting life and been around for so long, is kind of a boring dude. He's not not doesn't come across as really interesting in these interviews. He's got some great stories and stuff. Phenomenal guitar player, but just doesn't. I had a hard time sitting through an hour of that, plucking out the gems. And Stuart Copeland, I think, is a fantastically interesting guy, but someone who I wish that he had had some really big success on his own post Police, because he's
yeah. I agree
talented
with
and
that.
smart and deserves to have something else to talk about other than, again, like the drum parts he put down a bajillion years ago.
Yeah, I felt like the Sting one was like, it was a bummer. I was kind of psyched. I was super psyched that Rick Beato was going to interview this guy, and like, because Rick goes so deep on like the actual music stuff and everything else, and it was just like such a letdown because it just felt like he was like, why do I have to do this? It sucks. I don't want to be here.
Yeah, and he was
It
really not
ruined it.
forthcoming about his songwriting process. You can find plenty of other YouTube videos of old
Right.
interviews where Sting is excited to talk about it and playing demos and things like that. And there was a kind of a, aw shucks, I didn't do anything quality to the interview with Rick Beato. And I'm like, Sting, we know that you're a good songwriter. We know that you know music inside out now and knew it better than you let on back then. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? Like there's so many, like it seemed like a real missed opportunity. And I don't know if it was just because he was tired or he didn't want to do it, but that was the thing that really kind of irritated me the most. He
Yeah, it
yeah.
sucked. It totally bummed me out. And then Stuart Copeland, I've heard a bunch of his interviews, but I don't know. He's like such an animated guy. He's like such an incredible musician that I always listen, but it always feels like he feels like he's in Sting's shadow, and so like that like overtakes the whole thing. And every interview I hear with this guy is like backhanded Sting compliments, like that was a genius.
Exactly.
All right, how many times I got to hear that? And then I agree with you that Andy Summers was like, for me, it was almost in a way the most watchable because you don't hear him talk a
Right.
lot. You know what I mean? And he didn't have the Sting issue or the Stuart Copeland
Did you see
issue.
that
So it
documentary
was
about Andy Summers that he did?
no.
It was on. It's called "Can't Stand Losing You," and it was up on YouTube or something a while ago. I'll see if I'll
I'll have
send
to
some
check it
clips
out.
around.
Yeah, you should post it in the comments below.
Nicely done.
The only other thing I would mention, well, two things. One, I was listening to one of these Stuart Copeland interviews, and apparently there is some guy that when they were first forming, they were his backing band on some record. So there's some record out there with some unremarkable songwriter and singer with the Police backing underneath the thing, and he called it something like the Police Squad or something like that. I need to find this thing, but I totally want to hear that. And then the other thing that just bears mentioning is that, and Sting is like an incredibly talented singer, songwriter, the whole thing. But like, let's not forget, this guy was playing live shows with a fretless bass and singing at the same time. Like, singing and playing bass is hard, right? Just full stop with frets, right? But like doing it fretless and then also being Sting, it's
Yeah, I mean, he's
remarkable.
not playing a lot of like
It's
da 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 da
remarkable.
da 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 everywhere. There's yeah, it's a lot of syncopation and rhythmic interest, and like to do that and sing at the same time is is harder than people realize. I think harder than a lot of casual.
Yeah, you watch those early concert videos on YouTube, like from the first record. Amazing to watch. Like who else does that? I don't think there's any other. I can't think of another example of someone who's able to pull that off.
What is that?
Very hard,
The
remarkable.
fretless part, or just any of that?
Both. Like fretless is so hard to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So you have this impossible thing over here, and then on the other hand, you got like singing and playing bass at the same time with syncopation. Right. This dude's just like putting the two things
Yeah,
together.
One of the things, one of the things you'll find is like I've learned a bunch of those police parts, including some of the fretless bass ones, and a lot of how Sting does it is that he writes parts where he can park his hand in one position and just kind of move his fingers around. And it's true that the rhythms are tricky, etc., but it's practice. And he did a great job at Andy in this documentary and in some of the other interviews. Andy Summers has talked about how Sting just practiced a lot, and that's how he did it. And Sting himself has also been pretty direct. There are people ask him, how do you do it? And he's just like, I practiced a lot.
I'm singing like Sting. I'm singing like Gordon Sumner now. And here's the thing. You'll be wrapped around my finger now. With every breath I take and every move I make, I'm singing like Sting. And every little thing I sing is magic. Singing like Sting.